Yo, Kpaceguy here. So, you read the title. I got my first noise complaint, but it's a funny one. And I want to share it with you guys because actually in this video, after I tell you how I got my noise complaint, I'm going to tell you guys how to avoid getting noise complaints from other people in your apartment, if you're in a small suburban area, if you're like in a cul-de-sac where you got people next to you, whatever the case may be. I'm going to tell you guys how to keep the noise within your room, or at least within your house. So let's talk about this noise complaint.
Perfect.
So this complaint's actually kind of funny. It is an email, and the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is because this guy, I'd give him maybe about a good 55, maybe 50 years old or so, lives across the hall from me, sent an email to my mom, and I'm 25 years old, and he told my mom. So I'm gonna read this to you, and just listen to this. So he says, "Mrs. Pace, I live across the hall from your son Kyle. When Kyle first moved in, he was very quiet. I hardly knew that he was there. After he moved his girlfriend in, he has become more noisy. Last night, I was trying to watch the football game, and I guess he was playing video games and had his bass really high. He had his hall light on, and I rang the doorbell to ask him to turn it down. He then turned off his light and didn't answer the door. I don't want to be a pain. I'm not going to bother David. David is the landlord. I'm not going to bother David with it. He would just say to handle it or call the law. I don't want to do that right off the bat. I understand he lives here also, but you have to remember there are small apartments and you can hear a lot. Sorry to bother you with this, but I don't want to call law on him if I don't have to. Thank you." So let me explain to you what actually happened. First, we all know my games are played back here. At the time, I didn't have my fluences. I was still using the edifiers. Most of the time, I had my headset on, so I wasn't playing any video games. He didn't hear a video game. I have no sound system hooked up to the computer. What I was doing is watching a movie, and this is back when the Super Bowl was going on. So I was watching a movie. I had it up a little bit loud. It was about 10 o'clock-ish around that time, so it was a little bit loud for that time of the day. I will admit that. I was watching a horror movie, so it had its moments where it was kind of impactful. But by the time he had knocked on that door, I had kind of wondered who the heck is knocking on the door at this time. It was doom, doom, doom. So I was kind of looking around like, got up to stop the movie because all my components are over there outside the room. And then by the time I had gotten up to stop the movie and open the door, he had already closed his door. He had already walked across the hall. He only knocked one time. For a while, I was waiting for a second knock because, again, I didn't know who was knocking. And so I actually looked out my window to see if anybody was walking away, and I didn't see anybody. And that's when I heard his door close. And I was like, okay, now I know who knocked and I know why. So then I turned it down from that point on. So I didn't expect anything else of it. But the next day is when my mom called me and said, "Hey, I got an email from this. And I think this is funny because, first off, again, this man's like 50-something years old. I am 25 years old. I have no connection with my mom in this apartment. We are two separate people. So why are you telling my mom that my music's up loud?" It's kind of funny. It's also really funny that he commented on that night, because usually when I do my movie tests and things like that and demos, I turn it up far louder. And so he's never said anything about that. But I guess because it was Super Bowl, he really wanted to watch it. Usually he's not here when I do my videos, so it kind of works out. But I guess at that time he was home and he just wanted to watch Super Bowl, and he heard the bass from the movie and he got a little bit upset. But I just thought that was funny, guys, because again, this is a 50-year-old man telling on me to my mom, and I thought that was hilarious. But I apologize to him. I walked across the hallway when he was home and I was home. Apologized, said, "Hey man, I didn't mean to have it up loud. It wasn't loud. By the time that I had opened the door, you had already went across. So I do apologize for being loud." But I thought that was funny, a little bit weird. But that leads me to this video now. We're gonna talk about how to keep your sound within your room. Guys, if you're in a position like me, where you're in a small environment or you're sharing space with nearby people. Some people have their home theaters, with a wife in another room who doesn't want to hear it, children, or if you're in an apartment, you have, people above you, people below you, whatever the case may be. Every receiver comes with their own type of proprietary technology that allows them to try to keep that sound inside your room. And if you're running a Pioneer, I forgot what theirs is called. If you're running an Onkyo, a Marantz, and a Denon, if you're running Odyssey, it's going to be Odyssey volume. If you have a Yamaha, it's YPAL volume, and they all do the same things. When you turn that volume down, it adds a lot of EQ to the sound so that you don't lose detail and bass when you're listening at low volume. So I know a lot of people may have big subwoofers and big speakers, and they hate to turn it down, because why spend that much money on something if you can't use it to its full potential? And it really sucks, but you have to remember that people are around you. And of course, Yamaha, Pioneer, Marantz, Denon, Sony, all those people have put that into play. They realize that, and so every receiver nowadays has some kind of tuning. So when you turn the volume down, it amplifies some of that detail, so you're not losing the vocals in your center channel. You're not you're still immersed in the explosions and the planes and things like that are coming around you. You don't lose that. So if you go into your settings now, if you have a Denon or whatever, if you have Odyssey, if you have MCACC, if you go into the settings right now, you can actually see that you can toggle that on or off. And again, what that does is just add a little bit of EQ. The lower you turn the volume, the more EQ it adds, and then the higher you turn the volume, the less EQ it adds. So again, all it does is just add a little more detail, brings out more of those effects, so that whenever you do have to turn it down for those people around you or those people who are sleeping, you can still hear and feel what you're supposed to feel, even at low volumes at night. Another good way, but maybe not too practical, but I'll tell you guys anyway, another good way to keep the sound in your room is simply just acoustic treatment. It has two benefits to it. The number one benefit being you just get better sound in general, depending on what kind of panels you use. I have foam panels around my room. I've always had little 2-inch foam panels around my room for the last, 3, 4, 5 years now, and I would never go without them. Most of what you get out of the panels is to keep that tight, clear upper register, the higher frequencies, instead of having them bounce around and reverberate around the room, essentially just echo. You kind of lower that down. So if you go outside right now and you yell, of course you're going to hear it over and over again. That's kind of what you hear in your room, but at a lower scale. When you start to add your panels in, you start to lower that echo down to make it much more tighter. Now you don't want to completely cover your room in a whole bunch of panels, because you make it unrealistic. It's natural to have a little bit of reverberation. If you make it an anechoic chamber, which is a whole room filled with all sorts of panels and foam, you eventually feel just crazy, actually. You lock yourself in to this silent chamber, and you don't want that. You do want the sound to be able to reflect and bounce off just a little bit, but you want to tighten it up. Depending on what sound panels you get, you can also add some sound dampening. You can soundproof it to a point, so you don't have anything really going through the walls or through the door. There's cracks at the bottom of the door, the top, the windows. You can kind of soundproof that so you can keep the sound in your room. And what does that allow you to do? Allows you to turn that knob up a little bit more so that you can, experience it even at nighttime. So if you don't have acoustic panels, there's a lot of benefits to it, but it's also a good way to keep the sound inside your room, depending on what panels that you choose. And there is a right and wrong way to put panels up, so make sure you do your research before you just throw any panels up on the wall. The last and final tip can pretty much apply to anybody who has a moderate level receiver or a really good subwoofer, and it's going to be RGC, or room gain compensation. And most, if not all, receivers have it nowadays. Subwoofers have it built in if you have a technology in that subwoofer. But what this allows you to do is usually it's more prominent in smaller rooms, medium to small rooms. What happens is when you have a really big subwoofer, or maybe just a one that really digs really low, or just really a really small room, that room pressurizes those low frequencies. It adds a lot of bloatiness, a lot of boominess, a lot of muddiness in your bass, and it overemphasizes it. It exaggerates it. So what that means is that you're getting a lot of extra bass around certain frequencies that are much louder than the rest of your frequencies that the subwoofer is playing, and it sounds worse. So what this allows you to do is go in, and depending on what frequency you have an issue with, you can change it, maybe 31 hertz, 40 hertz, whatever you have. Maybe 50 or 55 hertz is just too bad, too loud. You can add some room gain compensation for that, or boundary gain compensation. B for boundary gain compensation, room gain, what do you want to call it, same thing. It allows you to go ahead and kind of put a little slope on those frequencies. So maybe a 6 dB decibel, a negative 6 dB slope, a negative 12 dB slope, whatever you want to put on there. It just kind of tunes those frequencies down when it gets closer to those frequencies. So let's say I'm playing a movie or listening to music, and around 30 to 40 hertz is just terrible. It just gets really loud, really muddy, really boomy. If I want to add some boundary gain compensation or room gain compensation, what I can do is put a slope around 40 hertz at negative 60 dB. So as we approach 40 hertz, it starts to roll off. At 31, it starts to roll off. And what that allows you to do is keep your bass in your room because it's not as loud, and it also sounds a little bit better as well. It's hard to tell if you have this issue. It's kind of just going to be up to your ears. What do you hear? Play a track or watch a movie you're familiar with, or even just run a frequency sweep from maybe 100 down to 10 or so, and just listen to it. And if you start to hear it gets louder and softer, that means your wave is going like this, and you want it to be as flat as possible. And that's what boundary gain compensation tries to do for you. It tries to smooth out those frequencies where it's a little more bloated. So play with that, listen to that. That may help you keep your sound in your room, and it may even just tighten up your bass in general. Even if you don't have an issue with sound escaping your walls and your door in your room, you can still benefit from boundary gain compensation. You're able to roll off the frequencies that don't necessarily need to be amplified and get a more smooth response. I personally have mine off. I've EQ'd the mess out of my subs with my ear only, not with any kind of technology, because your ear is your best technology. And so I've kind of kept it off, but I've actually added some dBs to certain frequencies to make it more smooth, more responsive in the areas that I like it to be more responsive in. So check your receivers, guys. You have a plethora of options and settings to use to kind of cater to your listening. I usually keep my white power volume off. I usually recommend you keeping it off because it does add a lot of EQ and DSP to it. I just don't like it. Personally, I don't like it. But again, if you're in a situation where you can't be too loud, it might be your best bet instead of just completely selling your system and getting a sound bar, So that's gonna be my tips for you guys. So if you found anything in this video that might have helped you just a little bit, maybe I taught you something you didn't know, leave me a comment down below. What do you think about the room gain compensation? Are you using it right now? Do you need it? Did you not know you needed it? Are you living in a small apartment, maybe a small house? Are you sharing your space? Let me know what you guys are doing and how it's working out for you. And then punch that like button and then hit that subscribe button. We're gonna elbow it today. This week is an elbow challenge. Hit that subscribe button with your elbow back there, and then we'll see you guys in the next video. Kpaceguy out.